Tune in weekly and listen to the Collateral Damage podcast, where Michael Wilson and Maureen Cavanaugh host a variety of special guests to discuss topics and available services that will help you learn about the impact that substance use has on our lives, our families, and on our communities nationwide. Episodes and listening information can be found at www.cdpodcast.com. You can also search for Collateral Damage Podcast on your favorite listening platforms or watch previous and future episodes on YouTube. Don't forget to subscribe and share. Welcome, everybody, to another episode of Collateral Damage. I am Mike Wilson, and I have my amazing co-host Maureen Cavanaugh with me today. How you doing?
I got to hang around you more often.
Yes, amazing.
Very good.
See?
I'm good.
Compliments across the board. It's all this social distancing and isolating. It just makes me want to be nice to people, you know?
Yes. Still, hopefully by the time this airs, we will no longer be social distancing, because I've had more than enough of it, I have to tell you.
That would be pretty cool. I mean, listen, I'm getting a lot done. Like I saw a meme the other day that was like, if you don't come out of this with a new skill or self-improvement or something like that, then you wasted this opportunity. So I'm trying to get as much as I possibly can out of this, quote, downtime, and maybe come out of this with something new. So hopefully our listeners are as well. So today we have a special guest, Ryan Ward, the whistleblower, is joining us today. And so Ryan is a consultant with his company, Ward Recovery Group. And he's also a person in recovery and has been very vocal and advocates for various forms of recovery. My understanding that there's no one cookie cutter way to address this. And, I personally have seen a lot of the articles and comments and stuff that you've put out on LinkedIn, and I appreciate you being so vocal, and I'm glad that you joined us today. And I'm curious to know what kind of sparked your passion to go down this road, because there are a lot of people that have had bad experiences. There are a lot of people in recovery. There are a lot of people that have had similar experiences but aren't so passionate and vocal. Like what sparked you? What lit the fire for Ryan Ward?
Well, first, I appreciate both of you for what you do and having me today. And I'm glad everybody's doing the social distancing part. I'm actually finding more social about it. Last night, I was with a group of high school friends on Zoom as they were having a drinking happy hour contest. I was entertained by it, but that's the most social we've been beyond texting in a long time. It's more physical distancing than anything. But I like what you said. First, I'm not an anti-AA person just because I'm an advocate for what they call MAT, or medicated assisted therapy. For me, it's Suboxone. It doesn't mean I'm anti any other therapies. Everybody is unique. The one chapter in AA that says we're all the same, you're not terminally unique, that I do disagree with, because we are all very much unique. We all react differently to medications, therapies, everything. It's different. And when you ask what lit me, I would have never in a million years thought I would come down this path. I went to high school, college with the focus of becoming an investment banker. That was my major, that was my focus. I graduated from college, I had a good career. I ended up actually going into recruiting because I didn't want to move to New York City. But climbed the corporate ladder, was very successful, had a lot of fun, but had no problems with drinking. I was a weekend warrior. I didn't use drugs, and other than working hard, I didn't have any addictions. I didn't any problems, I guess, if you will. At some point, I started having some back pain. Visited one of my parents' neighbors, who was a known neurosurgeon. I would equate him to Brett Favre coming back and playing today. Like, he was really good, but you wouldn't draft him now. I get a second opinion. This was when I was 27 years old. So on a healthy person with a little back pain, he did the full-on fusion. And apparently he didn't know how to use a screwdriver. So for 2 years, he just kept giving me Vicodin. And I had no idea, because none of this is a long time ago. So this is like 2003. So I had no idea of the opioid crisis. I didn't have a comprehension of it. So after 2 years of him giving it to me and me getting sick every once in a while, not understanding what it was, it was the Vicodin, me coming off of it. I finally, the titanium broke in my back. The screw finally completely severed. So I went to the ER. They ended up having to do a multitude of surgeries. So long story short, I ended up having probably more surgeries than birthdays, but I ended up addicted to painkillers. Just like you hear probably every story that ends up, they ended up addicted to painkillers. And fortunately, I never moved and tried heroin or anything like that, because doctors gave me ample amounts of pain meds. So at some point, though, I realized that I hadn't had any mental health issues, but I became depressed. And when I became depressed, that's when I started using the medication for more than pain, for mental pain as well, if you will, the escapism. And that gave me a really good understanding now when I look back on it, because in the beginning it was addiction or dependency, they call it. In the end, it was addiction. So in the beginning, I went to some of the best known treatment centers, and my first experiences were just baffling. I didn't understand it. I couldn't relate to a lot of the people, because a lot of these people were saying, I had my first beer and, it was, everything changed, it was like, and I was like, I don't understand that. I've never even blacked out, and so I couldn't comprehend. I couldn't relate. And sitting through AA meetings and therapy alone hurt my back and made me want to use pain meds. Long story short, I ended up in California at another rehab. Unfortunately, my counselor had, I think it was 200 days sober. This was my counselor at a place in Laguna Beach. And they were detoxing me from methadone, which was the worst detox in the world. After that, he proceeded to sell me to one sober home. And he called himself a coach, a peer coach or something. So he inserted himself between my parents and I. With that, he sold me to one home where I woke up and saw heroin for the first time. My roommate was shooting up. That was an experience. My second day at a sober home, we got raided because the house manager was dealing crystal meth. So
Jesus.
Multiple other sober homes in the process. And I just, along the way, saw how dirty it was. And just
Can I ask you a quick question? You said
Sure.
sold. You said that you were sold. Can you elaborate on that for our listeners? What does that mean?
Absolutely. Nowadays, it's considered patient brokering, meaning that rehabs or sober homes or any type are actively paying people to bring them clients. So they're doing sales. They get a commission because they know their insurance is going to pay 30 grand. So they pay these people sometimes $8,000 for one person.
Wow.
And so Florida's made it illegal. So all the patient brokers just went up to Pennsylvania and they still send them down here. I mean, it's just so many, it's ridiculous. But so that's what I mean by being sold. He had relationships with multiple sober homes. He would just sell me to another one that was dirty.
And now, did they offer you financial incentive to go from place to place, or was it primarily just the broker?
My parents were paying him, and he was doing some very shady things with my parents. So he was able to hide things well.
Because I've actually heard that's happening too now, is that they're not, they're going directly to the individual and saying, I'll give you $2,000 and a scooter if you go to this place because they take your insurance. And they're actually paying the individuals now to go out and relapse and then readmit into a different program. And so brokering has taken on a whole new face of, you don't even need a broker anymore. You just need that person incentivizing an individual to jump ship, relapse, stay in a hotel, or at their house until they can get into the next program, which is.
And it's sad because it's such a true story. You can literally drive down Delray Beach and see people with suitcases. I mean, you know who they are. They're the people who've just gotten kicked out of a legitimate sober home, and then that's who the patient brokers go after. And, fortunate, and that do it all the time, and they're trying to find ways around the regulations. But fortunately, from California, I ended up in Florida, and I fortunately ended up at it was just Hanley Center down in West Palm Beach, Florida. And they weren't a MAT program. They were an air highway place. But fortunately, they, like people at Betty Ford and Karen had said, where I had actual doctors say, you should actually be a long-term Suboxone patient because chronic pain is going to continue. You're always going to have to want to go back to pain meds. So there should be, but unfortunately, policy doesn't allow us to discharge patients on Suboxone. So administrators were overruling the doctors on a medical decision. And that's happening today. It's very disturbing. So fortunately, I had counselors and a doctor at Hanley that were brave enough to say, you do need to be on it. Administration says we can't let you on it, but try sobriety for a year. If it doesn't work, go see a Suboxone doctor. It's exactly what I did. An entire year, and at the end of that year, I hadn't had anything to do, nothing, and I was still miserable. I hated life. I did the AA thing. I did everything. It just didn't like it. I went to a Suboxone doctor, and that was 9 years ago that I went to the doctor. I've been on the same dose ever since. Never changed. Never had to fill a script early. Never lost my pills. Nothing shady. Nothing ever. So with that, turned my passion, and towards helping. So I kind of started in actually being a manager of multiple sober homes in the Palm Beach area. I saw a little shadiness there, and that was just kind of a taste of it. I moved and helped open a rehab in Boca Raton at that point called Dream Recovery International. And I was one of the founding partners, and we had some big investors from New York. We grew so fast, very successful program, that we had a waiting list. Well, we brought in a bigger investor who ended up bringing in a whole lot of fraud. So I was the only person who'd ever handled a P&L or had an economics background or any type of finance, but I was the COO. So I did everything but the money. So I kind of found it odd because the CEO had, I think, maybe a high school degree, and the investors weren't doing anything. So anyway, I did some digging, and now they're all serving 15 years. They ended up, I think it was 186 million they got away with.
Wow.
It was bad. I literally stood up and walked straight to the police department and filed a report, and I was fired. They actually had the nerve to fire me the next day too. But that's all right. They're all in jail now. And with that being said, I kind of went on LinkedIn to just talk about it, and it ended up being a lot of people, saying, hey, my place does that too, but I have a family and a career, so I can't do what you did.
What was it that they were doing?
And are you talking about Dream Recovery specifically?
Yeah.
If you could think of the crime they were doing, it from patient brokering to lab back. So you've got your drug lab, and that's still happening these days. Drug labs want your business, and we were testing all the patients every day. So you got to think about 45 patients constantly going in and out.
That's
we had
insane.
That quit 2 weeks, I think 3 weeks maybe, and when we opened, for good, no, it was a look like a peaceful leaving. A year later, I was signing a UA, just drug test for the insurance company. One of those just things where I just have to sign and go. And I noticed the stamp was the doctor that had quit after 2 weeks.
Oh no.
She was still on the payroll. She wasn't coming to work. And what I found was she was the medical director of 12 different rehabs in various jurisdictions of Southern Florida, where she would just bounce in and maybe once a month show up, write 1 million scripts for the exact same stuff. Even if somebody had been there,
oh my God,
get an accurate mental diagnosis on somebody detoxing, you just can't. But you do it in 2 minutes and continued to do it. But I didn't know she was part of the fraud as well. So, Dream Recovery said patient brokering. We had actually a lot of the guys that are in jail now for patient brokering. I met them. They were commonly in our office, just walking in and out, just like it was no big deal. And at the time, I didn't know what they were doing necessarily. I thought they were marketing people, and that was it. And they were marketing all right, but
it makes me wonder, because there's a lot of people in recovery in this industry, right? And I have to imagine that a part of them doesn't just say, okay, I'm going to get into this and act like a drug dealer. A part of them has some sort of a passion, right? Like there's a reason they went down that road. They maybe initially wanted to help people, but I think it's something about the way the system is set up and how enticing it is to do the wrong thing, and how limited some of the regulation is for these people, that, they're able to step in, and that passion is wonderful, but it's unbridled. There's nobody in charge of it. And so they get in and they're like, okay, I've got it. And now someone's like, hey, can you do this on the side? And the second you compromise that, the second you break your integrity and go down that other road, I think it's easy for people to get lost. I can imagine that some of these people were well-intentioned in the beginning. I can't imagine they were all criminals just waiting for the opportunity to get involved in the addiction industry, but it turns people. And the money, I think, is that you're talking about. You're not talking about a few $100s. You're talking about millions and millions of dollars. Yeah.
And it's getting so little coverage, and you'll see these local newspapers. And unfortunately, I've gotten enough following on LinkedIn now that people send them to me. Just a newspaper saying $100 million rehab bust. It's just not, nobody's seeing the macro. So I keep putting them up. I'm like, it's still happening, and nobody's talking about it. It actually changed our demographics. We are living less, and obviously COVID's the pandemic right now, but if you think about it, opioids have killed way more. Not had any reaction. I met with one of the many White House policy drug czars under Trump that we've had, and You know, he was only there for, I think, 6 months, or he's still there, but he was only the director for 6 months. But he just flat out said, there's really nothing we can do unless Trump thinks of it himself. And that's sad. I wish Trump would have a listening session and listen to people on the phone. You know, I mean, if you have no offense to Betty Ford, but if you have him, you know, the CEO saying everybody should be nonprofit making $1 million a year, well, yeah, if I was making $1 million, I'd say nonprofit too. I mean, that just defies common sense. And the science is taking us towards multiple therapies. So a lot of these people, like you said, who've been very passionate, become almost rock stars of the recovery community, are almost turning AA and MAT into a fight. You know, like I've actually was told in meetings, if I was on Suboxone, I shouldn't be in AA meeting because I wasn't considered clean. I laughed that off. That's me. But if I'd been a newcomer, maybe I could have just left and shot up in the parking lot, you know? Mm-hmm. And that's sad. I think people need to be careful about
Well, that's why I have, you know, I'm a 12-step person. So that's what I did to get well. And, you know, we own a men's sober living up here, and it is a 12-step sober living. We're not saying that it's the only way. We're just saying that the guys at that house would prefer to do it that way. So we provide them that environment. And if you'd like a different way, we would refer you out to someplace else. But it's not so much us versus them. It's just that I like the idea of Mara, right? Like we talked about this before we started recording, but that I think that started in Pennsylvania, maybe. It's kind of migrated its way around, and it's a combination of the two. It's, you know, going through that type of recovery process while being on that medication. It's the Medication Assisted Recovery Anonymous. I think I got that right.
I think that's how I thought it was.
Yeah, and I like the idea, and I'm curious to see how it plays out, because there is an us versus them mentality. I wrote a blog. This is the new war on drugs, is the war on how we talk about drugs and whether or not we're treating it the right way. Like, for real? How about you just get well?
Yeah,
like,
we're all on the same team here.
Yeah, you're not right. You're not wrong. I've done Suboxone. I did Suboxone for 2 years before I stopped, but I stopped because I couldn't use it correctly. I was abusing it still. So I was like, this is not right for me. And so I had to stop and ultimately find another path. But like somebody that could have used it correctly, like yourself, awesome. Right. And I want more people like you who feel like their recovery is, it has helped rebuild their life. And if they're using MAT, one of the things that I think is really missing out there is MAT advocates openly saying, I'm on MAT and it can work for you, because it is a lonely, dark place to be on MAT and to go around from group to group and have people question your recovery, but to not see public figures. Every public figure you see, abstinent, never doing it again, I was a mess. Like, and there's nobody out there aside from yourself so far that I've met. And I know people that are on it.
We've talked about this before. Yeah, we've talked about this before. There's people out there that we know that they're on Suboxone,
but they won't speak.
They don't talk about it.
And I know several that still do the AA thing and keep their Suboxone quiet.
That's a problem. And that's a problem for so many people that they don't know. Like, I know plenty of people that are abstinent. I mean, I can just watch TV and there's a new celebrity that's just decided to be abstinent that's now in recovery. Like, all I'm hearing is they don't use drugs anymore. And so for somebody that's trying to use MAT that needs that, who's the inspiration? Like, where's your group of people that are like, no, it works? Where's your group of people that you can get in a room with and everyone in the room is on it and they're talking about how good their life is now? Like, where's the inspiration to stay well using that form of recovery? And that bothers me as a person in recovery, because I get it everywhere. I get people supporting my form of recovery every time I turn around. Like, oh, you're abstinent? You do the steps? That's great. And I'm like, it is. And, oh, you did it too? Oh, you did it too? I'm constantly inspired to keep doing my version. And I feel like that doesn't exist the same way for you, does it?
No, and it's sad because I understand why people are passionate about what worked for them. And I saw AA save a lot of people. And I saw it. I've had a lot of friends die who tried AA too. I mean, and you can argue, and I don't want to hear about statistics and all that stuff. It's just, nobody knows.
That's a waste of breath.
Waste, and you can poke a hole in any of those stats.
Yeah.
But it's just be a productive member of society again. We're all on the same side, and whatever it takes to get you there, so be it. If you're not hurting anybody else, then just do it. Do what needs to be done for you. And a lot of people, it is doing both Suboxone and AA. They just a way to live life. I mean,
I think the silence perpetuates the shame, though, and then when we feel shamed about something, then we tend to doubt ourselves, and you have people coming off of something that's working for them because they feel ashamed of what they're doing, and that's because no one's speaking out. So thank you for speaking out for whatever form of whatever works, because I know my daughter's been on Vivitrol for the last almost 3 years, and that saved her life. There's no doubt in my mind that she wouldn't have made it if it wasn't for this form of and she tried Suboxone and it didn't work for her because she couldn't not abuse it. The Vivitrol worked for her.
Right. And just like methadone didn't work for me, I couldn't know
right.
it works for others. We're all unique.
And we need doctors to sit down and talk to people about what their life is like and what typically, what would work for them. So if you're somebody that's been using a long time and needs that reason to get out of bed every morning, maybe methadone is the right thing to do,
right.
or whatever it is. But we need to start listening to people and figuring out how to make something that make a plan that works for them, and not worry about whether somebody else thinks they're sober or not.
Well, it's interesting. I recently put out a post on LinkedIn, and normally my post will get a lot of views and several comments to go with it. And this one, man, it was just quiet. And I was making a point of a lot of facilities have moved to using MAT and various forms of it. Why don't you use more MAT speakers? You still bring in just AA speakers. So anyway, I said I would love to come and speak to a lot of the facilities, because in the Palm Beach County area, we're well over 400 inpatient rehabs now. So I can throw a rock and hit a place that is running MAT right now. Ask me and I'll come speak. I think I had like 20,000 people looked at it. Nobody wanted to talk. Nobody was like, hey, come in and talk to my crowd. I was even offering to do it for free. It wasn't like a consulting thing. It was, I just want to talk about it and get out there. And I'm not somebody, like I say, that pushes it, because there's cons to it. I mean, I can tell you, I've spoken recently to Titan Pharmaceutical, and they make the implant that apparently tapers you off unnoticeably.
The Sublocade?
Well, I'm sorry?
Is that the Sublocade?
Sublocade's Indivior's shot, which lasts for a month. This is a different product, and I don't want to name it. I think it's called Probuclade, but it's pharmaceutical makes it. And like I said, it's an implant. And I've been speaking with them. COVID's messed it up, but I said, I would be willing to try your product and keep a daily diary if it really gets you off. If it works and it gets you off taper-wise without a notice. I might have to go back on because of my personal issues, but I would at least be able to know if your product works. And I would be interested to see if it works.
I would love to hear about that. I would love to follow that with you and hear about it, because that's the number one offender for people falling back into relapse is the titration. The is it too short? Is it too long? The last 2 milligrams, they're all terror stories.
Mm-hmm.
It is. It's a nightmare. And I actually just recently found out I had Sam's Club and Walmart decided to stop carrying all forms of Suboxone. They didn't want to deal with it because insurance companies won't pay for it. So they're making cash on it, but they just don't want to deal with the clientele. So for years, I filled Sam's Club, and I always wanted to keep same doctor, same pharmacy. I wanted to keep that record so there could never be a question. Well, all of a sudden, they just said, we're not going to carry anymore. So I'm stuck with my script, and I got to find a pharmacy. CVS, Walgreens, and when I walk in, I look like a nice guy. I'm dressed nice. I say hi. I'm friendly. And I started noticing when I handed my driver's license with the scripts, which is what they'd always ask for, they'd pull me up, and their entire demeanor would change. I didn't understand what it was. I got taught. A lady at Publix grocery store down here, which thank God for them, a pharmacy, she explained it. She said, it's because of your NARC score. I said, my what? And it's NARX. She said, everybody has a NARC score, and all the pharmacies has it. So all the pharmacies that don't share, prescriptions and stuff that they should share, they do share this. And I've actually been working in previous to COVID with Politico on this story, because all of us have, if you go to your pharmacist and say, what's my NARC score? I have an opioid score, a barbiturate score, and amphetamine score. So like Adderall, Ritalin, things like that. So I've never taken Adderall, Ritalin, or been prescribed it. And so I have a 0. My opioid score is almost maxed, meaning I'm at the highest, almost the highest risk. So she said, that's why they don't want to fill your prescriptions. They don't want to kill you because you look like a person about to OD. Wow. That's what the computer's telling us.
Wow.
And I was like, wow, can you stigmatize me more? I had to show her my LinkedIn and show her that who I was, what I did before she would fill the script. And I mean, I almost had to go to the hospital and get dilaudid because I was not going to come off Suboxone because of their rule. And I have enough scars to easily get pain meds if I go into a hospital. But I don't do that, you know, but I'm sure as heck not going to go through a detox, you know, just because of that. Every month, it's, you know, luckily I have that pharmacist that trusts me now, but they're about to close down for remodeling. So I got to go through the whole process. But that's another item that just worsens things, the whole NARC score. And that's going to come out. There's somebody.
I've never heard of that before.
Me either.
In ARX. Yeah. Everybody ask your pharmacist, you'll see their jaw drop. I actually had one Walgreens pharmacist refuse to give me my own. And I said, I know it already. I named it to him. And he said, you're right, but I can't. He wouldn't do it. He knew it was a politically heated issue. There's something wrong with it. So
yeah, it's definitely a tough subject, the MAT. And, you know, I don't know, Ryan, if you know who I am, but I'm an interventionist as well. And, you know, my role, I guess I would say, is biased. It's biased in the sense that people don't call me when things are going well. They only call me when it's not working out, right? So, you know, when I get a call that somebody's that the family wants to do an intervention on their loved one and MAT is involved, it's a struggle for me. And it's a struggle because, you know, they may be using Suboxone or methadone, but it's clearly not working. Otherwise, I wouldn't have gotten the call. You know, they're not capable of managing it correctly. And, you know, whenever it comes down to me trying to place them, I have an ongoing battle with the resident physician or medical director, which is that they are super inclined to say, we're not going to detox them from the MAT, and they're basically just going to kind of do treatment while on MAT, and then we're going to put them back on it. And I'm like, so a bath while wearing a trash bag. You were in the bath, but you didn't get wet type of a thing. And, you know, I struggle with that because I do support MAT. I was on it. I know how it can stabilize and reduce harm and save lives and stuff like that. But if I've gotten the call, if we're at the point of intervention because the life is at risk, I find it difficult that I have to have this battle with these physicians that are like, well, you're not a doctor. I'm like, I understand that, but you don't know the whole story. And you're making a recommendation just based on what people will think of you if you take them off MAT versus what may actually be best is to transition them to some other form of therapy or some other medication that they can try that they wouldn't abuse. And it sucks for me. I'm not not pity party, but like it just.
Yeah, no, it's a great point, and it's certainly an issue that needs to be overcome. I'm actually glad they have the new specialty within medicine that doctors are getting now. That you know, they're specializing in addiction medicine, so they can't be a psychologist or whatever that sees that rehab is, you know, where the money's at, so they've moved over and they don't understand a thing about it. So they're going to tell people like us who actually do know more than they do about just this part of medicine, just this part. We're not trying to know it all. You know, my dad always is like, you're Dr. Google, you think you know it all, blah, blah.
Dr. Google.
This part I do know, you know, and they don't listen. So I'm happy they're at least making an effort. I've made an effort on my LinkedIn to reach out to medical students and new doctors. And I'm glad I haven't gotten a lot of them to participate in the subjects, but they're reading it and they're watching. So that, to me, at least, is a hope to see the new generation is a little more understandable, because some of the most hurt group out of this is chronic pain group patients. People that it's not like opioids are like cigarettes. They actually have a good reason. You know, they do serve a purpose. So it's not like you just need to nix them. You know? I mean, the suicide rate amongst chronic pain users right now is through the roof because all their doctors have forced them off because they don't want the scrutiny because the EA has come down so hard because of the opioid crisis. But addicts still get what they need. They just make a phone call and get heroin. It's not a problem. But people who've been following the laws are just killing themselves.
Or turning to illegal substances because the doctors are shaming them right out of their prescription, or they're shutting it down and turning them away. I mean, you're basically creating addiction in some areas.
It truly is. I actually had a doctor, and I'm not going to name him, but I had a surgery not long ago. I had a quadruple fusion on my neck. So 4 discs fused, and 1 had already been fused previously. So it wasn't a fun surgery necessarily. Doctor knew going into it of my Suboxone, I was open about it. I woke up from surgery detoxing because they didn't have me on enough morphine that it even equaled to the amount of Suboxone that I was on. They only had me, I think it was like 5 milligrams. I'm a 200 pound guy. Like, that wouldn't be enough. That's like a Skittle, you know. kidding me? I was literally detoxing, just pouring in sweat. Like, how's the pain? I'm like, worry about the pain. Give me a detox.
That's
Like,
crazy.
it's unbelievable. And it's the lack of knowledge, a lot of it.
Yeah.
And that's sad. And it's the stigma of the lack of knowledge. And I'm glad to hear, like you and I have the same goal. We have different perspectives for what got us there, but we have the same goal. And it's not like we're against the other one, I mean, we have the same goal. And I've seen people abuse, Matt as well. The only plus I say about Suboxone is you can't OD on it. The only problem.
I've seen people abuse the steps. They go in, they get the words, they use the material, they go home, they manipulate their family, and they go right back to using. Like, they don't get anywhere. You know what I mean? Like, listen, if you want to manipulate something, you'll find a way. Drugs, no drugs, program, no program. That was my biggest fear while on Suboxone, was the what happens if I go to the hospital? How are they going to deal with it? And then I really battled with the relationship with my doctor, access to my medication, which was that, like, I started to wonder if, like, I'd ask my doctor questions when I wanted to see him, like, are you like going on vacation anytime soon? Or like, how's your health, dude? Like, how's your health? You know what I mean? Are you going to survive this?
Those things. I understand it. I've been in that mindset.
Yeah. I was like, if you got any vacations coming up, could you just let me know in advance, and then I'll come in, I'll come in early or something like that. And I just, for me, that was too close to my addiction, because I was I was an addict for many, many, many years before I got onto Suboxone, and it was aggressive. So it was that mentality that got carried over, which is, when I heard about Sublocade, the theory behind it sounded really good to me, because it was like, okay, here's this medication that saves lives, right? And now you're minusing the daily activity of taking this thing each day to keep away the withdrawals. And I liked the theory behind it. I don't know how successful it's been over the last year.
It stops diversion.
Yeah, it would definitely, and stops diversion. And, I loved all of that about it. I just haven't heard too much since it came out. I know like 5 people that have tried it. They're off of it. And I mean, that's it. I don't hear anything about it.
I have a little bit of knowledge on that, and because I had reached out to Indivior, the maker of Suboxone, years ago, and saying, I'm a walking billboard. Why would you not hire me?
Right.
I'm invited to international medical conferences to speak all the time, but not AA meeting, or not rehab, which is funny. That in itself is funny, but it's just hard to understand. It's hard, and I want more and more people to realize that we're not at war with each other. We just want to keep people better, man.
Well, we all want the same thing, right?
Yeah.
I mean, like, the goal is the same for everybody. I don't know anyone that's like trying to stop that doesn't want what we have. I think there's a million ways to get there, and they've got to try the ones that don't work before they find the one that does, right? I mean, that's
right. And that's the unfortunate part. That's why you almost need someone like yourself to be following through the whole process, because if they do go to multiple rehabs, they're not, those medical files don't follow. And that's sad,
Right.
You spend 90 days at one place, 30 days at one place, 60 days at another. That, if you put it all together, you could actually get a pretty decent diagnosis on if this person's bipolar or whatever it may be.
Yeah, if they all communicated.
Right. But God forbid you collaborate,
Yeah.
It's unbelievable. It's hard to understand, which is what got me writing. And I'm going to continue to do so. And I'm actually doing another passion project right now. We're #walk a mile. And it actually started with a joke between my mom and myself years ago when Instagram first started and everybody was saying #everything. And I didn't really know what it was. I'm not a millennial. So my mom and I had an inside joke, and I have a lot of stigma even within my own family. I haven't spoken to a lot of my own family in years. And I would always just say #walk a mile. And that was her and I's joke, our inside joke. They'd never been there, and they couldn't understand. And she'd been through everything with me, so she could at least understand from mom's point of view. And so I'm wearing the pancreatic cancer bracelet, which got her, and then the walk a mile bracelet, which is what I'm doing now. So
Yep.
I started it originally as just a anti-stigma thing, just one of those things to stop with the mental health care and addiction, the stigma, and just what we've been talking about. And it's kind of taken on a life of itself, and including the chronic pain and PTSD and whoever it is. If you haven't walked in their shoes, stop the judgment and stop the stigmatization.
Absolutely. Ryan, I don't know how you feel about this. I noticed that because I work with a lot of young people coming in and out, and I noticed that a lot of them had that same great big plastic bag full of medications when they leave, and all those same, the clonidine, the gabapentin, it's like this cocktail that everybody seems to get when they leave, a lovely parting gift. I mean, I don't know if you've done any work around that, about trying to stop that.
Absolutely.
Because there's no way, like you said earlier, you can't diagnose somebody in detox. It's ridiculous. And if they've only got another 20 days, you probably can't diagnose them in those 20 days either, because they're not themselves yet. It's going to take 60 or 90 days to really get at the root of what's going on with somebody and what they might need.
It's almost, if it wasn't so sad, it'd be laughable at some of the things I'd personally been diagnosed as. I mean,
Right.
So to bipolar, to mood disorder, it was like, you talked to me on day 3 of a detox,
Right.
you could have talked to me 10 minutes later and I would have been a different, of course I was a schizo, probably temporary schizo, but
Yeah.
hard to understand. I know these doctors understand it. They're not stupid, but they know the money is within the rehab industry. And the sad part about it is, I don't think anything's going to change until the number of people doesn't outweigh the number of people making fortunes. Because right now there's more people getting rich than dying. And there's a lot of people dying. So that should just think about, and it's not just owners of rehab, it's sober homes, drug rehab, certification schools for whatever certification. The legit scripts now, you have to have that certification to be a legit rehab. Everybody's finding their way to try to be the HIPAA boss or the regulation if you pay us. And they're finding to make more money. And our insurance, I mean, when I was in Dream Recovery, we actually had one of our clients. They ended up suing their own client because he posted the bill on his Facebook, $965,000. To his insurance company, like it was ever going to get paid anyway. But
Right.
a doctor that hadn't worked at our place, he had 12 visits list itemized, and they sued their own client. But there's no regulations. Palm Beach County is absolutely the heartbeat. California and Florida are nightmares. I know Ohio is getting hit hard, but the regulations have to be fixed.
And Pennsylvania too, I think. There's just so many treatment centers in Pennsylvania right now.
That's where a lot of our patient brokers live now too, unfortunately.
I know from a parent's perspective, that's what I started following you originally, because you were telling on these people and it was like, yes, somebody's doing this. And I went through this with my daughter, and she was down in Florida, because in Massachusetts at the time that she was struggling, there wasn't much in Massachusetts. So that was the thing, is to send somebody down to Florida. And she went down there, and it was a nightmare. I think Mike's frozen.
No.
No, you're not.
I was listening.
Very intense. Very
focused. I was looking down, but I was listening.
He's in the zone.
Yeah.
You can cut that out, right?
No, I'm going to leave that.
Oh, he's still leaving that.
You were just so still.
Yeah. I was just giving an example of how stoic I can be, how still I can be in times of stress.
So I wrote a book called If You Love Me, and I talk about this. She went down there and got, transferred from one fairly good facility and she started to not do the right thing there, and they needed to move her, but they wound up moving her without ever speaking to me, which is not okay. And moved her to a place, and I was very worried about it, and talked to the executive director and talked to the clinical director. And I thought to myself, okay, I'm going to stay on this, because I was planning on going down there in a little over a week. And then I'll figure things out when I get down there, not knowing what I was going to do, because I didn't know a fraction of what I know now. Went down there, and every day on the phone with the clinical director, oh, she's doing wonderful. They didn't allow phone calls really, but she was texting me. So she was texting me and letting me know she was okay. And I think I talked to her maybe once in the beginning, and she was living in a sober house and going every day to this treatment center. And they're telling me she's doing wonderful, and she's doing an art project, and she's got such beautiful art skills. And I'm thinking, oh, well, maybe this place isn't so bad. And her art, she used to like art. Maybe this is a new skill that's coming out, a new hobby, and thinking all these things. And I get, the day before I go down there, I get a phone call from the sober house saying that she left like 4 days before. I'm talking to the clinical director. They're talking about a whole different Caitlin. They lost my daughter. She left, and they were giving me reports on somebody else named Caitlin. So when I see you going after the treatment centers, which that treatment center has since closed down, but and I was very vocal about who it was and what was going on, and but I was no one, you know what I mean? I was just kind of a mom at that point. I mean, now I have a group that has over 25,000 mothers and fathers and parents in it. Would be a whole different ball game. Somebody would actually listen to me now, but at that point I was nobody. And
Yeah.
but I did go into one of these groups and said, you know, what was going on. And somebody in that group got in touch with the executive director, and they called me immediately because they weren't returning my phone calls either. So I'm so glad that you're doing this, because I know what it was like to see what was going on and not have a voice, you know, and not be able to do anything about it. I mean, their answer was they were packing their stuff up.
I'm sorry you had to deal with that. That's awful. And I've witnessed that myself, and I can't imagine being in that position. I don't have children, but I watch what I put, you know, my parents through, and just uh, all I want to do is change that, you know, because it's funny because I've actually gotten a lot of stuff, if you will, for still having that on my LinkedIn profile. This first thing is Rehab Whistleblower, and I'm proud of it. I don't care. Like, I was bribed. I had my life threatened over it. I mean, I went through a lot to move. I had a lot of stuff I went through to do that. I lost my sweat equity I'd put in the company. I had hours of deposition, and I was a pariah to half the people in the industry, and it was tough. I mean, all around, it was a tough deal to go through, and to see it still happening and the lack of regulations just not going through is so frustrating. So I'm just going to keep doing it. And, you know, I put Rehab Whistleblower back on there. I'd taken it down for a few days, but I put it back up. I was like, you know, because people like yourself, I get so many messages from, hey, my daughter died in treatment. My son did this. You know, we were defrauded this way, or people that are currently working, like I said. Those people in the beginning, I tried to help, and I'd give them an FBI agent that I work with's name or whatever. But at this point, I'm kind of telling them, you know what, take the blinders off and do the right thing. Just
well, one of our Florida administrator is testified against Kenny Chapman.
Good.
Her daughter died in rehab. I mean, you know, so I'm up close and personal of seeing.
You know, the doctor for Kenny Chapman, Mendez, is still not in jail. And
unbelievable.
Partners with the doctor that I've been referring to. She doesn't even have a legitimate MD, and she's currently practicing, and I can't get anybody to stop her. I'm actually working with Vice right now to see if they'll do a reporter, because I've worked with them, someone just giving them comments for reports. Like, story. This is a story. Like, they busted her school for not giving legit MDs. And I had a deposition for a civil suit where she was sued for a girl's suicide just a couple years ago, where I was involved. The lawyer told me what he shouldn't have, which was that she didn't have a real MD, and she'd lied on her resume. But it got sealed because she settled. So this lawyer shut up, and I've got this information, and I even know the attorney that's got it. I'm like, why do we have to make a television show out of everything in order to get anything done?
Well, listen, did you guys watch The Pharmacist on Netflix? I
haven't watched it yet. No.
Okay. So it's what you're talking about right now is that, you know, this show, The Pharmacist, for those of you that haven't watched it, it's about this gentleman who lost his son to a drug deal in this town out in, I want to say, Ohio or something like that. And but it sparked this journey for him where he had this like passion to find the killer. And then he found the killer, and that same passion translated over to, he identified this woman that was giving out opioid prescriptions, Oxycontin, like it was a pill mill. It was just absolute ridiculous pill mill. And it took him years, and he almost lost his family over it. And every time he turned around, the FBI wouldn't do anything about it. The local police department was in on it. Like, he was fighting this David and Goliath battle, and everything was at stake because he was fighting against such a large machine. You know, and I fear that that's the same battle that you have in your right now at your approach here, is that, you know, you're fighting against a machine. Not that you shouldn't stop fighting; you should keep fighting. But I'm just saying it's a machine, and that machine lines people's pockets. That machine pays people's bills. That machine is gonna keep moving, and some of those people are key cogs in that machine, and MDs fit that bill unless you can prove like some real amazing stuff they might just stick around. Like I've heard lots of programs that, oh, we have a new medical director, and you look in, you're like, well, but they have this in the past. Like, how are they even allowed to still do this?
So they worked at a pill mill, and now they're the medical director of a rehab.
But no, he's a whole different guy. But he's a whole different guy. You know what I mean?
Changes perspective.
Yeah, he's reformed, and so it's definitely a machine. And I guess, you know, Maureen and I always ask this question, and I'm curious to hear your thoughts. Is like, if you could just change one thing, like just if you could have it your way and you could just do it, and you could just change a thing, what is that thing that you would want to change? What's your hope?
I do a complete paradigm shift to the addiction way. A complete shift. One of two things. One, either it moves to be a physical part of a hospital wing and held to the same standards. So like, you know, some hospitals have mental health care, have literally physically attached to and they held to the same standards. And you have the doctors with the mandatory certification of addiction doctors. So that way you actually know what's going on. And universal medical records would be another thing. Another concept I had, and I've talked about on LinkedIn, I actually had some VCs show some interest, is right now in America, a lot of malls are going out of business, bankrupt and for sale. They're geographically placed perfectly to put like a mental rehab where you have, and I always talk about how they're all the different therapies, but you get all the different specialists and put them in one spot and make it so you got your TMS, your EMDR, you know, whatever it is, your MAT doctor, your AA person, you know, whatever it is, all the different methodologies, there's a million of them. And then you bring the best of the best, and everybody's kind of part of a co-op, but you're still your own company. It's a different concept, but kind of an open air type thing. And
a recovery mall.
Yeah. You know, it's a good, I'm an econ guy too. So I look at the replay, but it's from a perspective, I just was trying to think of a way to be able to make everybody have all the options available. Cause you know, you can't do all the options. Like you said, you do what you know, which is AA, what you're good at. And if somebody requires something else, then I'm sure you have programs that you trust and you can refer them to.
Correct.
It'd be great if you could, you know, there was one place that had it all, and nobody can have it all. I mean,
no, when somebody can do everything, then that means that they can't do anything correctly, probably.
Exactly. It means they're all marketing.
Right.
Kind of like when they market, you know, we're a dual diagnosis. If
oh my God.
Diagnosis, what are you?
Yeah.
Like that is, or we have 70%, you know, or any type of,
right.
I love picking on.
The worst is touting success rates.
Yeah,
those are the ones I can't stop myself from absolutely going after.
I have one on the website for my company, right? Because people want to see one. And so I put one. It's like this little moving bar. It goes all the way up to 95%. And then the entire paragraph underneath it explains why that number is bullshit. And it doesn't mean anything. Because how can I possibly track everybody? And the true success depends on you as a family and how far you're invested in blah, 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 blah. So I give them the number. And then I'm like, but this doesn't mean anything.
Right.
And I think most programs should do the same. Like, how can you, at a 30-day program, say anything about success rates? Like, even Foundations Recovery Network has an entire team set up to track outcomes. But what do you really know? Self-reported outcomes? You know what I mean? Like,
I remember getting those calls. I would either take it as a joke and tell them how sober I was as I was getting high, or I ignore it. And they don't count that as a no. They don't count that in their survey at all. You didn't answer the phone.
Yeah.
You don't answer your phone, which is what most people do when they relapse. You're not going to take the call from the alumni.
Right.
If people gave like real success rates, it would be 60% of the people complete our 30-day program. From that point, we don't know what's going on. But
we don't have
we got like a 60%, we'll graduate the 30 days, and we're hoping for the best. Like, I'd be okay with that. You know what I mean? Like, just tell the truth.
At least it would be honest, right?
Yeah, just tell if a program told me that, I'd be like, nice. That's pretty good. You're more than half. I like it.
Yeah. I give you props. Yeah.
Yeah, we got a good shot. Just what it tells me is that as the interventionist, I got to put together a long-term care plan, and I'll add yours into the equation of all the other programs, and hopefully we'll come out with a result.
Yeah. Cool. Without a doubt. And people need the hope. They need focus.
So truth in treatment. That's what we need.
No, you know what people,
tell the truth. You're doing your best. They might get well here. They got like a 50-50 shot. At least they can.
And you might die when you leave.
Yeah, we don't know. We're just holding them, babysitting them, giving them some meds, and and then we'll hand them back.
At least if they said it was 90%, right? 90% success rate, then why don't the other 10%, they should be able to come back for free, right? Because then they would have 100%. But you don't see them offering that.
What happened to the other 10%?
Yeah.
Where are they?
Yeah, where are they?
Yeah.
Exactly.
What did they tell you when you called and asked how they were doing? Were they like,
they quickly removed me. They don't want a piece of me. They don't.
Oh, those phone calls would make me so angry because they would act like they cared too. And that used to really piss me off
Well, even
because
if
I
they
know
do,
that's
I
not
mean,
why they were calling. That
there's so
wasn't
much
why they
shame on the other end of the phone. If you did relapse, I mean, you're gonna lie. You're lying to your mom about it. What, you're not gonna lie to the program that's calling to check in on you?
I tell you, there is one new, there's a new interesting, and I'm actually talking to them right now and might do some work with them. They're called Freedom Now, and they're basically like an urgent care that we all see everywhere, but a psych urgent care, an addiction focused urgent care. So, and right now you can't, bad time for them to be opening during COVID. They can't be a 24/7, type clinic like that, but I think it's a good idea, and they're on to a good concept with that. And putting the whole idea is to put a lot of them and urgent care for psych care. Because I thought that myself. Like if my doctor, like you were joking earlier, get your doctor's schedule. I'm like, man, if my place went out of business tomorrow, luckily I'm not LinkedIn. I can just say I need a West Palm Beach doctor, and I'm sure I could find somebody. But if I didn't,
You'd be all right.
I'd be in some trouble.
Yeah.
Lead to relapse. I mean, for no reason, no good reason. Not that there is a good reason to relapse, but that's another thing right now that, boredom and addiction are so correlated. I have to say that I'm glad to see that most of the rehabs I talk to, their census is up and they're very concerned about COVID, but, businesses, people are still coming in and they're very busy. But it terrifies me. I remember boredom being, just absolutely one of those things that it'll cause people to relapse.
The reality is, and you talk about this, the paradigm shift, you know what I mean? You have to flip the whole thing upside down, is that, I feel like, and I can't, Desmond Tutu, the quote, that the people floating down the river, we're spending a lot of time pulling them out of the river, and somebody needs to go upstream and figure out why they're jumping in the first place. Like, yeah, we've got a lot of triage services, you know what I mean? There's tons of detoxes and rehabs and treatments and medications that all help us deal with the fact that it happened. But the reason it's happening is because we have a world that people don't want to live in. I use the word American hostage. I'm an American hostage. I was born here, but I didn't choose this country. Like I'm here because I was born here and I don't like it, but I can't leave. I can't move. I can't just take my kids and leave. Like I have to try to find a way to get comfortable. And I couldn't as a kid. Like I did not like the world I was growing up in. Everything was so disconnected. Like, I don't know if you guys have heard about the 150 member community. There was a gentleman I heard on a podcast, and he talked about that community stretches once you hit about 150 people, that the connection in a community, the need for people to be accountable to their reputation dies off over about 150 people. Like if you take a tribe of 150 people, everybody knows everybody. Everybody knows what their purpose is, what their job is. People that are born into that community are going to pick up where their parents left off, or they're going to fill a need. Everyone has a purpose and everybody knows everybody, and your reputation matters, right? You can't live in a community of 150 people with a bad reputation without fixing your shit, okay? Or addressing it or having it addressed. There's no place to hide, right? Once you get over 150 people, you start to stretch the limits of that community and the need to be accountable to your reputation. You also start to stretch your access to people. You no longer know everybody. You no longer feel as connected. And once you get into the millions/billions, you lose purpose. You're not born with a purpose.
Widening concentric circles.
Yeah, you don't even know where you belong or fit in. I mean, think about neighborhoods, right? You go back to like 80s, 90s, pre-internet neighborhoods. Your community was, you knew 20 or 30 people in your neighborhood. You knew some people at school. You knew 150 people maybe, from the people that work at the nearby grocery store to your family and friends to the sports team to some kids at school and teachers. That was your community.
They knew your business and you knew theirs.
Exactly. Reputation mattered. What you said mattered, blah, blah, blah.
Yeah.
Now, like you said, your kids are growing up so disconnected, but connected. So disconnected that reputation doesn't matter anymore. People are behaving differently. People are growing up not feeling connected, without a purpose. And I mean, why wouldn't you want to distract yourself with substances? It works. That's how we do it. So I'm all for it, man. I would love to see a paradigm shift, and I would love to see a change in something. Until then, I'm just going to keep using the tools that are at my disposal and chipping away at pulling people out of the river.
That's all we can do, and one at a time. And I thank you both for what you do and how many people you help. It's funny, a few years ago went back to Hanley and thanked my counselor. And I remember And he remembered it. He said, you remembered it. You asked me, I'm a cool dude. Why on earth would I do this job? Apparently, that was one of the first things I said to him. I said, honestly, because I'd come from a sales background, I said, with this much of a failure rate, how do you, people dying all the time, how do you deal with it? How do you deal with it? And he's like, I don't know what his answer was then. When I came back, he said, this is why.
That's why.
10 years later, and he was like, because now you're a leader in the community helping people. He said, 10 people that died in your class, you're saving others. He's like, that's why. So I'm happy to see people like that with the right motivations, to do things. So
I know it takes a lot of courage to call yourself the Rehab Whistleblower and to get out there, to be vocal and be public, and to not worry about, or at least not show that you worry about what people might be saying or thinking or feeling, because you're up against the machine. And I can't fight that fight. I had to make a choice a long time back. My board of directors, when I first started the company, was like, you got to pick a lane. You're either out advocating and fighting the fight, or you're doing the service. And I chose the service, and I can't fight the fight. So I have to rely on people like you to help us change that landscape. And so I applaud your effort. I appreciate your work.
Thank you so much.
Our listeners will check out some of your posts on LinkedIn and support your efforts.
I really do. I appreciate it. Yeah, please check me out on LinkedIn, Ryan Ward, and hashtag Walk a Mile. Courtney Labonte and I have both founded this, and she's helping me a lot. But best wishes to both of you. Thank you so much for all the people you help. If I can ever be of help on any of you, please reach out. Look forward to it.
Thank you, Ryan. Keep doing what you're doing.
I will. And
all right.
What about you, Michael? I hope you're not sick. I heard you coughing in one of the podcasts I was listening to.
No. I had the flu last year.
Okay, I didn't see the date on it, so I was like,
January. Yeah,
the flu. We don't know what it was.
I don't even know. It lasted for 2 weeks. For all I know,
you're the outbreak monkey.
You were really sick too.
I was. Oh my God. But they're saying you can go back, and if you had flu-like symptoms as far back as like November, it could have been corona, and it could be over now. You know what I mean? And if your body built antibodies based on you having it, then you might not get it. So there's a lot of fun theories being spun out there about it, but
that's all it is theories.
I'm still wearing my mask. I still got my special hand sanitizer, the good stuff. This is the Surgicept. This is like
the real deal.
Cutting into your
You want to see something? You want to see something sad? Go on Craigslist or letgo.com and type face mask for sale.
Yeah.
There are so many people price gouging. It's pathetic. If I was a law enforcement officer, I'd be going and just screenshotting. They're not trying to hide who they are either. Like, they're just blatantly doing it. Like,
well, the comedy side of it is my cousin put out a post, and he's got like a little 3-pack bottle of Purell, and he's like willing to trade for a motorcycle. And I mean, that's just funny. He's obviously not doing it for the same reason, but it's an interesting thing that's happening out there. But again,
brings out the best and the worst of people.
Thank you for joining us. I really appreciate you taking the time. And
thank you both.
I look forward to hearing about your efforts, and I would love to hear if that company gives you the ability to do that, the blind taper medication. Please reach out to me, because
Absolutely.
I would follow that. I would want to have you back on the show, because I really want to know if there's an alternative to, I guess we'll just call it a cold stop titration. Like, you get down to 1 or 2, and then you should be fine, because that's not real.
Yeah.
No.
And so if that's an available option, I want to know about it.
Me too. I look forward to talking to it, and I thank you both for everything you do and all the people you help, and stay healthy.
All right.
You
Take
too.
care.
All right. Bye.
Thanks a lot.
Bye.
Bye.